Game Pass for PC has been out for a while, and we at DF have not had a chance to look at many of its titles. But with new editions of The Evil Within from Bethesda and NieR Automata from Square Enix, rumors were abound on Twitter and the internet that these new Game Pass games were entirely new versions, different from their initial Steam releases. Is this true? Well, kinda. To talk about this, I'm joined by my friend and colleague John Linneman, who's here for support.
Yeah, pretty much. I haven't tested these myself, but after hearing about the frustrating couple days you've just had with all sorts of issues with these things, including discovering what the heck's wrong with one of them, yeah, I'm here for you to just bounce this stuff off of me. So please, shall we begin with The Evil Within? Because I think this one was the perfect storm of terrible, as you've called it.
The basic idea was going back into these older titles with an older PC, GTX 1060 Core i5 8400, not as old as these titles are themselves, but something that's lower end, that we could see the performance differences between port versions should they actually be there. And like you were saying, John, taking back this PC to the original The Evil Within, the Steam version, perfect storm of terrible describes it a little bit. Basically, it's an id Tech 5 game, no offense out there, but also from a Japanese developer on PC targeting 30 FPS, and there's kind of a history of less than spectacular PC ports from a variety of Japanese developers, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that, but this one on release was okay-ish, and going back to play it now, after it's been patched a number of times on Steam, the original version, well, it has some problems still that can be fixed. Basically, the original game, if you play it now, in its default unlocked to 60 FPS option, it'll actually be running at around 58 FPS in reality, kind of having a little stutter tick when you turn the camera around or any of the animations in the game, and this will show up on our frame rate tools. You can fix this though by kind of adjusting the launch parameters, turning off swapped interval as it's called.
Oh yeah.
This is a typical problem that happens in id Tech 5 games or games that target a kind of locked 60 FPS.
Also with id Tech 4 as well. This was a common problem.
Exactly. It's kind of very similar problem that we see there. So when you do unlock the frame rate in the original Steam version, it actually can be fixed. It goes above 60 FPS at this point internally, but is actually still sending out 60 frames per second to your display after you unlock it. It's a bit like fast VSync, and this fixes actually a lot of the issues, the camera or any of the other issues that the game may have. The only problem is that above 60 FPS, there might be gameplay repercussions for playing the game.
So we can basically say the game has issues initially, but there are some tweaks you can make externally to essentially fix the game.
Yes.
Which is very typical of PC gaming. So I guess the question is, does the Game Pass version fix it?
No. This was very frustrating. So you load up The Evil Within on Game Pass. It defaults to this 1080p 60Hz option in my experience. The first time I played it, it ran rather normally. The exact same as the Steam version, except for the fact that you cannot unlock the frame rate on a 60Hz display to fix the frame stuttering problem. The problem is, the second time I loaded it up after closing it the first time. After I did this, the game was just not running right anymore. You could look at Rivatuner's statistics server here, or RTSS, and it's saying the game is running at 60 frames per second. The only problem is it is actually not running at 60 frames per second. This had me tearing my hair out because I thought there was something wrong with my capture equipment. I reinstalled Windows multiple times, actually, on the test PC to figure out what was going on here. The game is actually putting out somewhere around like 40 to 50 FPS and constantly swinging up and down when you play it, looking extremely jerky. Reinstalled the game multiple times and I kept having this issue. The problem with this is that after installing The Evil Within on Game Pass, I went back to play the initial Evil Within, the original version from Steam, and I found out that this behavior was also now affecting that original Evil Within on Steam. I don't know what's exactly happening in the background here, whether or not they're sharing configuration files or they're adjusting registry entries or something like that are shared between the two. But after you install the Evil Within on Game Pass, it actually can kind of mess up the performance of the original Evil Within on Steam. And you can technically fix this in the Steam version after the fact by running the unlocked frame rate, which I'd recommend everyone to do. But the fact that this is happening in the first place
Wow.
is very distressing. And it had me tearing my hair out because I thought actually my PC was broken multiple times.
That's annoying. So basically, the Game Pass version not only does not run as it should, it also messes up the installation of the original Steam version if you have that version as well.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, the only real things it seems like they've added is like a few extra features, like there's like a first person mode now and a few other little tweaks and changes like FOV adjustments and things like that weren't in the original version. But beyond that, doesn't seem to be much.
Yeah, there's basically the first person view is kind of a bit janky. It switches to third person many times in the cutscenes. And a lot of the game's designed around third person, so just walking around in first person for a lot of things actually is a little awkward. You're not sure exactly what's happening.
Here's the thing. You told me, and you showed me, the first person mode is locked behind the Bethesda.net account.
Yeah. I was going to get to this because it's so rage-inducing. Essentially, the idea that they released this port here, it's also not running very well. That's one thing. But then to even access the new features of it, you require a Bethesda.net login. Otherwise, you're locked out of the...
Why do you do that?
I have no idea, John. I was... After all the performance problems, and then I stared in the menu. I was like, oh, I should try out the FPS mode for this video to, just to report on it. And then I'm just like staring there at the blocked out options that are gray because I can't access them because I don't have a Bethesda.net login, which I forgot, of course. And then, you have to go to your email, figure out what your password was for this thing that you never end up using. This Evil Within on GamePass, this is rare that I say this at Digital Foundry, but was an exercise in frustration for me from the performance angle and from the user experience angle. It was just not great.
I'm kind of glad I wasn't able to test this because I couldn't. The Game Pass app didn't even work on my PC properly.
Yes.
I needed to do some tweaking to fix that. It was just getting stuck on the install.
Maybe this was just a fluke, somehow localized to my PCs and Windows installs. But still, even if you don't have these performance problems, the game will still have the exact same performance stutter problem that it has on the unmodded Steam version. But let's move on to the next game. NieR Automata. Now, this is an interesting one because the initial game has issues of its own that are fixed much like the Evil Within through fan mods or kind of adjusting the game outside of the initial game scope. The original game, more often than not, actually runs at around like 59 FPS. Much like Mario Kart on Wii U back in the day, this causes like a constant stutter tick. A little bit like the Evil Within, but it's 59 FPS.
Oh no.
Yeah, there's other problems too, like the fact that anti-aliasing option turns on MSAA, but that makes the game's LOD transitions pop instead of cross-dither fade via post-process. There's other issues too, like the fact that the game's ambient occlusion setting is actually the thing that turns on temporal anti-aliasing, and the fact that the game kind of is really heavy on GPUs because it's using an imperceptibly different alter setting for its global illumination. All these issues I just described are detailed on the PC Gaming Wiki, have been detailed by the PC gaming community for years, and have also been fixed thanks to Caldean with his FAR mod, which I tried out.
Oh yeah.
This fixes a lot of issues. Perfect 60 FPS, flawless, even on a GTX 1060. Other than the fact that there are still some GPU limited moments in the game on that GPU. We go to the NieR Automata GamePass version. Now, looking online, this looks to have been done by QLock, I believe, and they say that they've essentially enhanced or made additions to this original version as the way it sounds. I went through and I played it, and honestly, this is more or less the same game as the original. Yes, there are slight differences in the fact that you can now output the game in HDR, and also the game now has fidelity effects sharpening if you want, and it's on by default. But other than that, the game has the exact same performance profile as the original, and unfortunately, it also has the exact same switching between 60 and 59 FPS issue. So
Great.
GamePass version of this actually has a constant stutter that would not necessarily be there on the Steam version if you mod it. This is a bit of a shame, I feel, because both these games are actually really great. I really like both of these games. They're really good fun.
Absolutely.
And it's just not a great way to play them on PC if you do have access to them on a Game Pass. And the problem with, I guess, Game Pass itself here on PC in comparison to the Steam versions of these games is that you cannot mod these Game Pass versions. They're kind of locked away in hidden folders that are like encrypted essentially.
And fundamentally, that is why I don't find this service very appealing on the PC. It doesn't take advantage of what PC offers. You can't do the typical PC game things.
Yeah, this is my first contact with it, and unfortunately I had this very negative experience. NieR Automata, not as bad as The Evil Within, but in the end, I do not recommend playing these versions of the game if you have the opportunity, and I actually do recommend the Steam version still. With a little bit of modding and tweaking, they're actually pretty excellent these days.
So it's interesting. I should mention, it sounds like Steam version modded is the best way for both of them. But then second to that, if you play either of these games on like a PS5 or something, all the performance issues are just fixed.
That's a really good way to put it.
And there were still issues on both, even on PS4 Pro and such. There was still issues. And I haven't tested the Xbox versions, but I can say that BC does solve those problems.
Yeah, that's a really great way to put it. Basically, there are a lot of better ways to play this than on Game Pass. But John, thank you for listening to me vent my frustration. This has been a chaotic last couple of days.
I hope this was at least a little cathartic for you, because this is the most vitriolic video I think you've done in a long time.
Oh, yes, it is. And I'm sorry for that, everyone in the audience, if I sounded a bit unhinged and unable to control myself. But thanks for joining me, John.
Sure thing.
Yeah, and if you did enjoy this little rant, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, then hit that little bell in the corner to be informed as soon as Digital Foundry posts a video. If you want to help us out, support Digital Foundry on Patreon to get years worth of our rants in high quality for download. If you want to talk to me about GamePass and maybe the problems you experienced yourself with these two games, well, please write a comment below or contact myself, or I guess John, on Twitter. And as always, this is Alex bidding you auf Wiedersehen und
Steam.